Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, it's hump day. I guess happy Wednesday hump day. We got a great show for you today. I got to start out with a topic that shouldn't surprise you, but might surprise you. There's a new Rasmussen poll out, and it's about voting and what people expect to have to go through to vote. And lo and behold, 73% of black voters actually support voter ID, including a majority of Democrats. So we're going to get into that, talk about it, break down the numbers a little bit. And then the Biden administration is actually proposing, or on the verge of proposing, a global tax, a global corporation tax worldwide. Now, what could be the possible reason for that? Could it be the New World Order, one world government? We'll talk about that. But before we go any further, we always have to talk about our sponsors at the top of the show. Big Daddy Unlimited, our main sponsor, otherwise known as BDU. Look above our show, above the video, no matter when or where you're watching it. You'll see a description of the show, what we're going to talk about, but you'll also see links to our various sponsors. Big Daddy Unlimited, your Second Amendment headquarters. Click on that. You will be happy you did, especially if you believe in the Second Amendment, because they are virtually your Second Amendment headquarters, because you get factory direct pricing, guns, ammunition delivered directly to your door, including over 100,000 related items like tactical gear, protective wear, even survival stuff, all of that kind of stuff. Big Daddy Unlimited, and they defend your Second Amendment rights on a daily basis. Check them out. Then we have patriotthreads.org, apparel with a purpose. I happen to be rocking one of their shirts today. They are apparel with a purpose. Remember the initials of our show, John Martin Talks, JMT. You get 20% off of anything they have there. Essentially what they do is they're a total fulfillment center. They produce lovely sports and gear like this with a patriotic theme, and they'll help you with charity events. Check them out. You cannot go wrong. Then Recoil TV, also about the Second Amendment. They have a magazine as well, but they have their own YouTube channel, Recoil TV. We have our own YouTube channel, John Martin Talks, spell it all the way out. But we have a channel within Recoil where our show is archived on a daily basis. They're all about the Second Amendment because they produce high quality, high production value videos on the latest issues, the latest types of guns, ammunition, hardware, anything related to the Second Amendment. You cannot go wrong with Recoil TV. All right, we're going to get into the show now, but before we get into the topics of the day, I have to mention something that in a way impacts all of the country, could for sure, but certainly in Florida. Congressman Al C. Hastings is dead at 84. Now, he represents Florida's 20th congressional district, which essentially is the Palm Beach area. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Mr. Hastings, but let me tell you this. If you want to know what is wrong with the modern Democratic Party, all you got to do is look up the career of Al C. Hastings, and it will tell you everything you need to know. He was a federal judge who got impeached, convicted of multiple crimes as a judge, spent some time, did some time. When he was eligible, he ran for Congress and has been up there for a good long time. Check out Al C. Hastings. The one thing I will say about this now, and I'm not sure exactly, I tried to research it this morning, but I ran out of time. In some cases, the governor appoints a temporary representative, but I believe, and don't hold me to this, I believe the fact that we're just coming off the election or re-election of Al C. Hastings, I think they have to actually have a special election. There definitely will be a special election for this seat, which will be open because the incumbent, as I say, has died. I'm not relishing that in any way, but now we have an opportunity. Now, it is obviously a very heavily Democratic district, but if you want to know what you can do locally, One of the things you could do if you live in the Congressional District 20 of Al C. Hastings, the late Al C. Hastings, you can support a MAGA candidate to take that seat. Wouldn't that be a shot across the bow, not only politically, but we obviously would have a thinner, or Pelosi would have a thinner majority in the House. So I hope a solid MAGA candidate rises up there and has an outside chance to win, a puncher's chance, so to speak, to win. But if you want to know what you could do, support that candidate when they emerge. All right, now let's move on to the meat and potatoes, as I say here. This is a Breitbart story. Survey: 73% of black voters say voter ID is necessary to a fair and secure election process. Now, are you surprised by this? I'm not. Nearly 3/4 of black voters believe voter ID is necessary to ensure a fair and secure election process, according to a Rasmussen survey released on Tuesday. Now, of course they do. I mean, this idea, and we've got a black congressman that's later on in the article that's going to talk about it, also from Florida, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But this idea, and I've been talking about this for off and on for weeks, months, if not years, this idea that you can't get a voter ID, or you wouldn't want to get a voter ID based on the color of your skin, is preposterous. And it's absolutely racist. It's idiotic. And I'll get into the reasons why the Democrats still support, call it voter suppression, in just a minute. But who should be surprised that a person who believes in America, believes in the sanctity of the vote? Think about this. What about black people in particular? And I want to expand on this. I guess I'm going to go on a little bit of rant. When you think about all that black Americans have been through in the United States of America, their experience dating all the way back to slavery and right through and the Jim Crow laws and the fact that they couldn't vote, they were slaves, all of that stuff, who would not respect the vote and the power of their vote more than a black American? And I'm not saying that they're unique. I guess really I am saying that. They're uniquely should appreciate, and apparently they do, the sanctity of the vote. So to me, it would be a shock if black Americans didn't want to protect the integrity of the vote. But we keep getting fed this bucketfuls of BS from the Democratic Party that black Americans are feeling suppressed about voter ID. It is ridiculous from the start. It is ridiculous now. Black Americans appreciate the vote probably more, or at least as much, as any other American citizen. I don't see how you could see it any other way. On with the article. The survey taken April 1st and 4th among 1,000 likely U.S. voters asked respondents this question: are laws requiring voters to show voter identification, such as a driver's license, before being allowed to vote necessary to a fair and secure election? And 73% of black Americans said yes, that it is. The vast majority of voters across the board, 75% of voters in general, said yes. I mean, are you surprised? Really? If you think about it, why? If you care about the country and you believe in the U.S. Constitution and you appreciate what, no matter what color you are, how much people have gone through, sacrificed their very lives in order for us to vote. The number should be even higher. But the fact that it's 75%, especially when you hear all the nonsense that comes from the progressive left, I guess we should appreciate that. A majority of Republicans and Democrats also held that sentiment. 89% of Republicans and 65% of Democrats, respectively. A pretty solid majority. 65% of Democrats say that they believe in voter ID. 65%. And what was that I said? I think 73% of black Americans. So the question, the obvious question to me is, if 65%, because they're always talking about, and both parties do this, we want to do what the voters want, which they don't. They want to do what their power brokers want. Both parties are guilty of that. But the Democrats, let's focus on them for a moment. If 65% of Democratic voters, including their most loyal supporters, Black Americans, which is 73%, actually support voter ID, why are the Democrats so against it? Can you name me something else where you had those kind of numbers that the Democrats would come out against? Think about that. They literally are opposed to voter. It's not like they're, lukewarm on it. They're adamantly opposed to it. In fact, they play towards Black Americans and prey on them, so to speak, saying that, voter ID laws are suppression designed to suppress the black vote. So why would Democrats, if 65% of registered Democrats support voter ID and 73% of Black Americans who they target with these nonsensical charges support voter ID, why would the Democrats actually, I'm talking about their leaders, why would they actually support it or be opposed to voter ID? Because the answer to me is very obvious. It's all about power. It's all about destroying the fabric of America. They want people to be opposed to each other. Remember a video I played last week, actually. You can go back and look at our podcast. There's several ways to do that, by the way. You can look at our Facebook page, which immediately has it, John Martin Talks. Our YouTube channel, we play live on, spell it all the way out, John Martin Talks. It's archived on there later in the day. It takes about 6 to 8 hours for YouTube to repost the video. You can also go to America's Voice News, AVN, America's Voice News. They are a great alternative to the mainstream media. We don't have a live show on there at the moment, but we are archived on there. They have streaming networks on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, free apps on your Android, your iPhone, Channel 219 Dish Network, and the Pluto channel. But click on their streaming service, look under the shows tab, search out our show, and you will see it there on a daily basis. But their leaders, the Democratic leaders, are adamantly opposed to voter ID because they want to destroy the Constitution. Remember, and as I say, I get back on point, talked about this before, but when you look back on tearing down statues and all that kind of stuff, one of the things that we saw was Black Lives Matter actually tore down Frederick Douglass' statue, one of the greatest Americans, period, but Black Americans, who was an abolitionist and helped people get free. They tore his statue down. They desecrated the Black Union soldier statues in Philadelphia, which fought with the Union to free Black Americans, and that was desecrated. Why would they do that? Now, some of it is just ignorance, stupidity, or whatever, but some of it is absolutely deliberate, like tearing down Frederick Douglass statue, because here's the thing. They being the progressive leftists, Black Lives Matter, which is a communist organization, they don't want African Americans to be proud of any aspect of being an American. They don't want Black Americans to identify as Americans. They don't. So that's why they did that. And that's why they're opposed to voter ID, even though the majority, obviously, of Black Americans and Democrats and Americans in general are for it, because they don't want you to feel like you are represented. They want you to feel, if you're a Black American, that you're on the outside looking in. They have to have that in order to cling to power. And if you don't believe that the leaders of the Democratic Party are trying to put all kind of nonsense out there, let's listen to a couple of them. First, I'm going to play Joe Biden at his press conference talking about, what he's talking about is SB 1, or Senate Bill 1, that federalizes the U.S. election. And he's criticizing what has happened down in Georgia with the voter integrity law. And we'll get into more details of that in just a minute. But I want you to hear what Joe Biden is saying about what happened in Georgia and basically voter ID and everything else. Check it out.
What I'm worried about is how un-American this whole initiative is. It's sick. It's sick. Deciding in some states that you cannot bring water to people standing in line waiting to vote, deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work, deciding that there will be no absentee ballots under the most rigid circumstances. It's all designed, and I'm going to spend my time doing three things. One, trying to figure out how to pass the legislation passed by the House, number one. Number two, educating the American public. The Republican voters I know find this despicable. Republican voters, the folks outside this White House. I'm not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about voters. And so I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
Jim Crow.
I mean, this is gigantic.
Think about what he's saying there. He's saying that voters, and he's trying to, I don't know which one he's pointing to, but I just read to you that the majority of Americans, including the majority of Democrats and majority of black Americans, want voter ID. They support it, which is the core of Georgia. Let me just get into what Biden said right there, because it's so, he said he wants to educate the American people. He wants to educate the American people with a bunch of lies. Pretty much everything he said in that statement was a lie. Even the Washington Post, hardly a right-wing publication, gave him 4 Pinocchios, which I think is like their highest score of lies. Because first of all, and they focus on water. Trust me, this is all about voter ID. There's nothing saying that people can't give people in line water. They're simply saying that political activists can't come up and accost people with a fake thing. Oh, here's water. By the way, vote for such and such within 150 feet of the polling place. Which, if you think about it, at social distancing, assuming we're still practicing that, we're not talking about but about 25 voters. The rest of the people they can talk to all they want. And as far as he lied about shutting off early voting, in fact, Georgia expanded early voting to 2 full weeks, including a potential for 2 Saturdays and 2 Sundays. They expanded. And as far as absentee voting, they simply said you have to have a ID and to cast any type of ballot, including absentee, and you need witnesses. And Georgia put something in this new bill that they've never had before, and that is drop boxes. You know, there were a lot of issues with drop boxes because they were put at random out there and paid for by Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook fame. All due deference to algorithm. Mr. Algorithm is the toughest guy out there. But all Georgia did was say you can't have these private drop boxes. They increased drop boxes into precinct areas for early voting and absentee voting, but they're under lock and key and people actually watching over them, which is reasonable. So Biden is full of crap, lying about it, at the same time saying he's educating the American people. Don't buy this nonsense. Wake up and see what's really happening, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But that, ladies and gentlemen, right there, what Biden said, and the media didn't challenge him on it, you need to watch shows like ours to get the truth, because you're not going to hear the truth much coming out of the mainstream media. I'm actually shocked that the Washington Post gave him any Pinocchios, even though he certainly deserved that. So spread this message far and wide. Share our show everywhere you can. Email people. Let them know we're on, because we need you. Now, if you want to, I'm going to play you a clip. Now, this video is actually about 5 or 6 minutes long, and we're not going to play but about a minute of it. But you could search it out. It's real easy to do. You could Google it, I suppose. But remember, I hadn't said this in a while, but Google is of the devil. I'm simply saying. But this is old Chucky Schumer talking about this, why they made this SB1 the main priority for the Democratic Party, because they know that they will get they'll be in power perpetually, forever, if that bill actually passes and holds up to the Constitution by the Supreme Court, which I don't trust any of them. Listen to Chuck Schumer, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Our first bill after suffering through 6 years of Mitch McConnell's legislative graveyard. And what did Democrats make clear? that we're standing up to voter suppression. We are standing up to the despicable acts of voter suppression in so many states. We are committed to ending dark money that has corrupted our politics and government for too long. And we are ensuring that public officials work for those they represent, not special interests. This is comprehensive, it is strong, and it is democracy with a capital D.
That's good enough. Couple of things. They always talk about dark money, like, somebody, the Republicans they say the Republicans are the party of the millionaires. Well, the Democrats, if true, as the Democrats say, they're the party of the billionaires. Who got more money from big fat cat corporates, people, Wall Street people, than Joe Biden or Obama before him, or Hillary Clinton for that matter? And then Chuck Schumer has the audacity to talk about special interest, that they're passing this bill to try to prevent special interest. Well, what special interest are they trying to prevent? When the special interest of Black Americans, according to this polling, want voter ID. They actually want more police in their neighborhoods. I'm telling you, America in general, but Black America, you're being fed a bunch of lies. Wake up. That's all. I'm not saying, you got to be all about Donald Trump. You don't have to necessarily be all about the Republican Party. If you want to support the Democrats, then that is your right to do so. But do so with your eyes wide open, because these Democrats are lying to you. They have been lying to you for the last couple of 100 years. Wake up. That's all I'm saying. And if you truly get woke and you still want to support the likes of Joe Biden, then so be it. But do it with knowledge. That's what I'm about. But special interest. What special interest? When it showed that the majority of Americans, including Black Americans and Democrats, want voter ID, but Chuck Schumer and them don't want it because they realize that it could hurt their hold on power. While Democratic politicians routinely liken basic election integrity measures to voter suppression all the time and means to suppress the minority vote, a majority of Black voters, 73%, believe voter ID is necessary to ensure a fair and secure election. What is more, 81%, listen to this, 81% of other minority voters, so minority voters other than Black Americans, also believe in voter ID. The numbers are overwhelming. Now, here's this Black congressman that was elected. He's a big MAGA supporter and was first elected here in 2021 in Florida, Mr. Byron Daniels. He's among those who have listened. This you really need to hear, because I've been saying this for a good while, and I'm glad to hear that I think I'm on the right track. But Congressman Donalds actually says basically the same thing I've been saying. He listened to it. And so Representative Brian Donalds is among those who have blasted the left's narrative of voter ID laws missing the Black vote, calling it suppressing the Black vote, calling it disrespectful. And he's absolutely right. He is Black MAGA, baby. And he's woke. This guy's truly woke. This is what he said. It bothered, talking about voter ID and calling it suppression of the vote. He said, it bothers the hell out of me. And what's worse is that they never showed data on how somehow Black people don't have access or IDs or disproportionately affects them because they simply can't get it. They just say it. They just put it out there. What he's saying is there's no data that shows that Black people have any more trouble getting voter ID. In fact, like this survey says, 73% believe in voter ID. And I believe it'd be 100% if they actually understood what was happening and the lies they're being. And I kind of said this earlier, but think about it. You're telling me that the people who are ancestors of the people who survived coming over here on the Atlantic while, many of their kinsmen were thrown overboard. You know this, that there's been evidence. I haven't talked about this in a while, but there's been evidence that sharks change their pattern even to this day because of the number of people who were thrown overboard? I mean, there's some statistics that show that. There's some studies. I don't know if they're true, but it wouldn't surprise me. But black Americans were put on ships, brought over here, sold into slavery, survived the Jim Crow or the Jim Eagle or whatever Biden is talking about, fought for civil rights with people like Martin Luther King, literally faced dogs, guns, hanging, lynching, everything else. I'm not sugarcoating any of it. They faced all of that. And you're telling me that those people who stand on the backs of their ancestors, the shoulders of their ancestors, cannot get a voter ID? It's ridiculous. And it is insulting. Congressman Donalds is absolutely right. And it pisses me off. And he says the same thing here. He says here, he went on to say, I find it, frankly, it's disrespectful. It's literally the soft bigotry. I would say it's even hard bigotry of low expectations. Low expectations. The Democrats have zero expectations of black America other than just show up blindly and vote for Joe Biden. And this is what Congressman said. He said, because what you're saying is that a black kid can't get an ID. Spot on. But he added, he went on to say, and so for the left to use this as somehow having an ID as somehow hindering your right to vote is outrageous to me. And he ends by saying, it pisses me off. Amen, sir. We certainly need more congressmen like Mr. Daniels. Exactly what I've been saying all along. All right, let's move on this story. Major League Baseball recently opted to pull the All-Star game and draft from Atlanta. So they pulling the game. The All-Star game was supposed to be in Atlanta, and now they're moving it apparently to Denver. We'll get into that in a second. A city with a sizable minority population. Here's what the commissioner of baseball, Robert Manfred Jr., described it. He said, the decision, and I want you to listen to this, the decision to move the All-Star game is the best way to demonstrate our values as a sport. Let that sink in for you a minute. He's saying the decision to move out of Georgia represents the best values of their sport. The best way to demonstrate our, let me read you some statistics. Atlanta, GA. The racial makeup, and these are the latest statistics I could find, a population of Atlanta was 54%. Now, there are precincts I looked up that are in the 90% of black Americans. So 54% of Atlanta, the greater area of Atlanta, is made up of black Americans. 54%. So moving it takes it away from one of the blackest cities in America. Did you know that there's already research that shows that the All-Star game would have brought to the local economy of Atlanta over $100 million impact? Now, who would have gotten that money? It's not just Ted Turners of the world. A lot of black working folks, a lot of black-owned businesses that have contracts with the stadium and everything else would have gotten that money. Now, sorry about your luck. The racial makeup of Denver, where they're moving this game to Denver, listen to the statistics. White people like me, old salty dogs like me, make up 77.5% of the population. Denver, Colorado is one of the whitest cities in America. Black Americans represent 2.3%. So Major League Baseball is saying that by moving it, it shows their values. So they apparently don't value black America much at all. And it reminds me, as I was talking to my producers, it reminds me of a South Park episode, and I can't really play it because I don't have copyright, where in the episode, Cartman, if you know the show, is trying to egg a fight between Token, which is the black character in there, and another one, and Token refuses to fight and Cartman starts out by saying, race war, race war, race war, and then when Token decides not to fight, he goes, whites win, whites win. So apparently, whites win. We win it again, brother. You black Americans in Atlanta, Georgia, sorry about your luck. But Mighty Whitey out in Colorado has just won the dadgum lottery. but that represents Major League Baseball's values. I mean, they're the level of BS that they are feeding us on a daily basis is indescribable, over the top. And that's why you gotta wake up. You gotta wake up. You don't have to support Donald Trump. I hope you will someday, or support the MAGA agenda. You don't have to watch my show. I hope you will, and I hope you will share it with others. But if you're out there and you really believe that this is justified, then you're actually, understand what you're saying. If you think that moving the Major League Baseball out of Atlanta, the All-Star game, to Denver, and also this, here's another thing that no one's really talking about. They talk about the voting in Georgia. Did you know that Colorado actually has voter ID as well, and has had it for a while? Did you know that they're talk about early voting and how, what did Biden call it? It's sickening. It's sickening. Georgia has longer early voting period than Colorado. So, I mean, it's just insane. But whites win. Major League Baseball, whites win, you know. I'm not getting any of the money, but I'm just telling you like it is. I'm not trying to make this about race. I'm trying to tell you that they're destroying us. Charles Barkley is right when he said over the weekend, I played the video, maybe I'll play it again, not right this minute, but that politicians on both sides of the aisle, they want us black. He said that blacks and whites generally are great people and love each other and get along fine. But they have to be torn apart by politicians because they want to keep their power. Why else, ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Barkley is spot on, why else would the Democrats be opposed to voter ID when such a huge majority of not only Americans in general, but Democrats and black Americans specifically are for it? Because it's not about what they say it is. It's all about power. That's all this is about. But the commissioner of baseball, Mr. Manfred, went on to say, Major League Baseball fundamentally supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions at the ballot box. Well, I just told you that that Colorado actually has more restrictions to ballot access and all than Georgia. I mean, so it's just stupid. Major League, and here's the real clincher on this. Major League Baseball has its own voter ID requirement for fans picking up tickets at the stadium. Go try to pick up a will call ticket at this game and say, well, I don't really have an ID. Or if they ask for it, it's racist, it's racist. I mean, it's crazy. Voter ID, tell me one, you can't hardly even function. I'm going to put it this way. You can't function in our society without an ID. But to require one for the thing that people have literally, including black Americans, have literally died for, is suppression to ask for. To me, it's just crazy. But what we got to do, ladies and gentlemen, that's why and this is why you got to watch shows like because you hear all these lies, all this garbage. They're feeding you shovel by shovel by shovel load. You got to educate yourself by watching shows like educate yourself. Then you got to educate others. You got to have the courage of your conviction to stand up to these lies and tell people what's really happening. Use some of these statistics. Invite people to watch our show. So you got to educate yourself and others. Then you got to motivate yourself and others to do something. And then when you got your education right, your motivation right, then you need to activate yourself and others and actually do something. And we need to eliminate some people. And I'm talking about by voting them out. And we need to start right here in Florida whenever they have the special election for the late Al C. Hastings. God rest his soul. I don't wish people any ill, but we need a MAGA candidate to step forward in that election. And we need Democrats, people of all races, religion, get behind that candidate and elect him to office. That will send a message. All right, we got a few minutes left. I want to get into this next story because this story here is not getting much news coverage at all. But to me, it is absolute. If you love the United States of America, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in all the sanctity of the things I was just telling you about voting, this story, especially if you believe in the uniqueness of America, this story should scare the bejesus out of you. This is from an AP. Yellen, Janet Yellen, who is the Treasury Secretary. Yellen calls for minimum global corporate income tax. A global corporate income tax. And hang in there with me and you'll find out why I think this is so scary. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen urged the adoption of a minimum global corporate income tax, an effort to at least partially offset any disadvantage that might arise from the Biden administration's proposed increase in U.S. corporate tax rate. So Billy Bob here, he's my psychic sidekick. If you hadn't, some of us are sicker than others, and yes, I'm a fish whisperer. Make fishing great again, and I go as much as I possibly can. But he's got a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at BillyBobBass1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. We, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to get on with the story in a minute, are determined to stay in the social media market, no matter where it is. Facebook, Twitter, news sites. We're on BitChute. We're on Rumble, those kind of things. We're starting our Parler account again here in the not too distant. We're on MeWe. We're on all these things. But we're determined to stay in the market square. And he keeps me straight, by the way. But he tells me, Billy Bob just whispered in my ear, we got a psychic connection, that there is a method to the madness of having a global corporate tax. And it connects right what's happening today. You just go, this explains why we have this open border policy, right? Just let everybody in, no matter where you're from, terrorists from Yemen, whatever, it don't matter. Let everybody in, because at the end of the day, it's not going to matter what country you're in, because we're going to have a one world government. That's what this is about. This is moving towards a one world government. And if you want to be a conspiracist, who would lead that one world government? Could it be Barack Obama? Maybe he will lead the whole thing, because apparently he's running the White House right now. Back to this article. Citing, this is what Ms. Yellen said, the treasurer. She said, citing a 30-year race to the bottom in which countries have slashed corporate tax rates in an effort to attract multinational businesses, Yellen said the Biden administration would work with other advanced economies. I wonder who they are. Probably China. In the group of 20 to set a minimum. Race to the bottom. It's an interesting choice. Because where are they taking America right now? With the laws right now, doing away with our energy policy. We were energy independent under Donald Trump for the first time in like forever, certainly in my lifetime, gone with one executive order. Poof, gone away. I'm telling you, energy independence is one of the biggest things. If you believe in America's greatness, that was a huge blow to us. And they're opening the border that literally, I just reported earlier this week, that 170,000 people, the largest in like 2 decades, were apprehended crossing our border just last month. 170,000 a month. You do the math. And they're spreading them out all across the country. Well, maybe it doesn't matter if they get their wish where people live, because we're going to be one world without the U.S. Constitution. But Yellen went on to say, listen to this, competitiveness is about more than how U.S. headquartered companies fare against other companies in global merger and acquisition bids. So it doesn't matter whether our companies do well or not. That's irrelevant, apparently. She said, it's about making sure that governments have stable tax systems. Whenever they talk about stable government, it's not like they're doing it because they want to build a wall. You hear they're actually thinking about redoing the wall now down in Mexico. It's crazy, man. Just put Trump back in charge. Don't worry about what's her name, Kamala Harris. Remember I told you her press secretary, when asked, when's Kamala going to the border? Her press secretary last week said, oh, she's not doing the border. Like she's not going shopping there. Put Donald Trump back in charge, or at least his policies. But she went on to say, Yellen said it's about making sure that governments have stable tax systems that raise sufficient revenue to invest in essential public goods. That really sounds great, right? What it really truly means is that they want strong governments all over the world. Strong governments and freedom are like an oxymoron. Do you realize that our Constitution was not established to create a strong government. In fact, there wasn't even a standing military in the original part of the Constitution except for the Navy. You know, they weren't about empowering a strong government. They were about protecting the rugged individualist rights, our God-given rights, like to defend ourselves, to have freedom of speech. It was to protect those rights from being taken away by a strong federal government. So this idea that you can be free and have a big, strong government, it's never been that way. The strongest governments in the world are the least free. But it's all about strengthening government, man. And that's one reason why, ladies and gentlemen, I do this show every day, to battle ignorance and apathy. Because so many people have no clue now, especially younger people. It's not their fault. They're being taught ridiculous nonsense in our public schools. But our Constitution doesn't need to be rewritten. It needs to be reread and understood. And that's why I try to do this on a daily basis, ladies and gentlemen. But listen to what this Miss Yellen said. And she's one of the most powerful people on the planet now, because she is the treasurer of the great United States, Secretary of the Treasury. She said, it's important to work with other countries to end the pressure of tax competition and corporate tax base erosion. Now, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't understand gobbledygook government talk, you're not alone. But ladies and gentlemen, this is scary stuff. This is scary stuff, because she's talking about basically having a corporate tax structure that is worldwide. Now, I don't know who would control it, this group of 20, that kind of thing. I don't know. I tell you this. Do you really believe for a second, assuming we did this, that China would simply comply with that? Oh, yeah, China'd get on board, right? They would say, okay. I mean, they own all their corporations. They got Uyghur Muslims making stuff for Nike and Apple. And oh, by the way, this is something I was thinking about on the way in. Where are the women's rights movements these days? Where have they gone? Where are the feminist movements? Did they ever speak out against what's happening to women in China, especially Uyghur Muslim women that are being gang raped, being prodded with sexually prodded, that are being harvested for their organs, or their organs harvested? Where are they women speaking out against? Where the heck is Hillary Clinton? Do you remember Hillary Clinton was all about women's rights? She kind of made a name for herself on the national stage about that several years ago. I haven't heard peep from her. Where's Kamala Harris? We know she's not at the border. She's not saying a word about what's happening there. What about women who are being literally kept out of sports here? It's up to the states to actually say that women have to compete against men. It's crazy. But where are the women's rights groups? Nowhere. But do you really believe that China would, oh yeah, we're going to pay our fair share? Heck, we can't even get, before Donald Trump, we can't even get our NATO allies to live up to the agreement they signed and pay their fair share. Donald Trump did that. What do you think is going to happen under Biden? That's why the Europeans, they love the piggy bank the United States of America. So do you really believe that China, which you can't believe anything coming out of there, is going to, toe the line on this? Or that NATO, as I say, our greatest allies, European allies, are actually, when they won't even pay the money they agreed to pay, are going to pay this? No, only American corporations will end up paying their fair share, if that. President Joe Biden has proposed hiking the U.S. corporate tax rate to 28% from 21%, partially undoing, I would say partially, majorly undoing, Trump administration's cut from 35% in his 2017 tax legislation. Biden also wants to, check this out, set a minimum U.S. tax on overseas corporate income to make it harder for companies to shift earnings offshore. Sounds good, but in reality, it's not. The increase would help pay for the White House ambitious $2.3 trillion infrastructure proposal. Let me just clarify this, ladies and gentlemen. If you really believe that raising taxes on Walmart, I'm not picking on them, just using them because everybody knows about Walmart, is going to really drastically hit their bottom line, and that you're not going to be paying that tax, then you have no understanding of economics and the free enterprise system. When Walmart's costs go up, what do they do? They raise the prices to you. That's the way it is. You're paying it. And when it comes to energy independence, this is a real sign from California the last time Biden was anywhere near the Oval Office when he was vice president. Look at the gas prices there. They're heading in that direction right now, thanks to directly to the Biden administration. And do you not believe that gas prices, well, they've gone up at least $1 a gallon everywhere in the country since Election Day, right? Who's paying that? Do you really think, and I'll use Donald Trump as an example, do you really think that the price going up $1 a gallon on gas really affects his travel plans? But it affects yours, right? I mean, it's a tax on working class people. Biden said he's not, listen to this, and you just, if you don't understand this, then maybe you're wondering why I get all shook up. But this really bugs me. Check my time. We got a couple minutes left. Biden said he's not at all. This is a guy that's never concerned about anything. He's not at all concerned that a higher corporate tax rate would cause some U.S. companies to relocate overseas, though Yellen's proposed global minimum corporate tax is intended to prevent that from happening. So he's not all concerned. And it gets better. Biden said in response to a question from reporters, there's no evidence to that. He's saying that there's no evidence that a higher corporate tax rate causes companies to move overseas. And he went on to say, that's bizarre. No evidence whatsoever. And we'll conclude the show with this. There's no evidence that raising taxes and regulations, we could throw that in there because you know they're going to do that, Green New Deal and all, on corporations affects them staying in America or relocating somewhere else. Tell that to a UA auto worker. Tell that to a union auto worker in St. Louis or anywhere in Michigan. Tell that to steel workers in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania that got their jobs back under President Trump. Tell them that, you know, raising corporate taxes and rules and regulations has no effect on whether businesses do work here or overseas. It is absolutely crazy, man. And basically what they're saying, I said I was going to end, but I got to read this. She's talking about, Yellen talking about inflation. She says, I strongly doubt that it's going to cause inflationary pressures. The problem for a very long time has been inflation that's too low, not inflation that is too high. So basically what she's saying is you've been paying way too little for your goods and services. You need to pay more. We know how this is going to end, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be Hunger Games worldwide. The elite will be in their cities, and the rest of us in a worldwide government will be on farms working for people like Janet Yellen and Nancy Pelosi to go shopping. I hope you've enjoyed, and don't forget Kamala Harris. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to our various social media sites like Facebook, YouTube, all of these different sites. Like them and share them with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Remember our sponsors, please. And let's pray for this nation because, boy, she needs it and deserves it more than ever. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.